Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this week's An Nur the Light. Ladysmith is a small town in northern KwaZulu-Natal and home to this week's featured profile, Irfaan Bemath. We got to spend the day with him and learn more about his family, food and charity work.
The Bemaths of Newcastle are a family well known for their long lineage of cooks. Many family members are involved in catering companies and restaurants, but they are mostly known for their contribution to large-scale cooking and distribution.
We've been blessed, our entire family is in the cooking industry. My mother's father and my father's father were two brothers. They've been working from the age of 9 years in Mullah's Cafe, that's in Victoria Street in Durban. And they've taken a passion up in cooking, and from there the families got together cooking with their parents, and we're the third generation, we're the great-grandchildren. That's where we took the passion from our parents, and the tradition carried on from there. The night before my dad passed on, that's when I was given the authority to now cook on my own. I always cooked with him, and that was right until 2008. I never ever cooked on my own. I was with my dad.
Irfan's name is synonymous with the best biryani in town. He's also the guy to call for any last-minute emergencies when disaster strikes and large groups of people need to be fed. This means Irfan is often on the road traveling throughout KwaZulu-Natal to cook and cater to those in need.
The beauty about this Bemath family, no colleges, no university, no attending lectures and what have you. They've just picked it up, natural gift, and they have perfected the art. They are indeed an asset not only to Ladysmith, but to the Muslim community of South Africa.
Al-Falah Caters has been established for many, many years, starting from my late dad, which was Bhai Bemath Caterers. And after my late dad passed away in 2008, I took over and I changed the name to Al-Falah Caterers. It was a name that was Al-Falah that comes in your azan in the Muslim, Hayy al-Salah, Hayy al-Falah. I started washing pots from the age of 13 years old, which I took a passion going to my dad, putting my hand in the fire and lighting the fire. And that's when I took the passion of cooking. And that carried on. And here I am today, cooking food and for functions, for charity work, weddings, engagements, funerals.
Family is key when it comes to Irfan's success. His wife assists with the bookkeeping and management, and he hopes that his children will take over the Bemath legacy.
I run a diner, Bemath's Diner, Irfaan Bemath's Diner. I have a catering company called Al-Falah Caterers, and I do the catering for functions and obviously the mass feeding. I'm not just one-man band. I have my family support behind me. I have my wife. I have my kids' support morally. I have my physical support with my team that stands by me. And most of all, I have du'as and blessings that carries me forward.
His latest venture is a rather trendy diner. As one of few halal places in Newcastle, it was a hit from day one and is a legacy he intends to put his heart and soul into.
This diner was established in 2015, as of November 2015. It was established with the demand of the so-called residents of Ladysmith and the passing trade that go out of town. And with the public response, it gave us an opportunity to provide our services more to them, and that's how we created the diner for Ladysmith. There are some dishes that it's a legendary in our family that we maintain and keep quality to, like your biryani dishes, your dal gos, gajar halwa. These are some of the dishes that we are known for with our name.
Irfan works incredibly hard to ensure he is successful, but he also credits everything to Allah. For him, faith and success go hand in hand. He also has a plan to encourage young people to do the same.
I pray for one thing and I make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me good health, gives me the ability, to continue this work until He wishes for. And the way forward is that I strongly hope and I make dua and I always influence the youngsters to come and partake in projects like this. So they are the future soldiers. And I make dua that, Allah guide it, that also to give strength to the future generation, the future youth, to carry on this work. This is community at large that partake of this, yeah. And I pray and I make dua that we have future soldiers in the future.
Irfan's contribution to the community of Newcastle truly makes him a household name with food, which has graced the tables of many homes. He's not only a businessman, but gives back to his community, and his passion has fed not only the stomachs, but the hearts of many.
Our young brothers and sisters are looking around for inspiration as to what to wear and how to look good. This is the reason we came up with our Street Style segment, and we're in Cape Town this week checking out the coolest threads on the coolest kids.
Fashion is really important to me because both my parents are fashion designers. So I grew up with fashion surrounding me, and I also always took an interest in, looking good and presenting myself.
Style for me is basically, looking good, not really showing off, but trying to look good, because if you look good, you feel good and you do good.
Before I get dressed, I try and make sure that my outfit's not tight and long, although I feel that the hijab I wear is not the perfect hijab, but I am taking baby steps into wearing the perfect hijab one day, inshallah. And yeah, if I'm struggling at what to wear, then I just end up wearing black, all black.
What I'm wearing today is a plain denim shirt, denim jeans, some fancy socks and a formal shoe. Basically just threw something together, see what it looks like and pulled off works.
I like to use shirts and, for some neck coverage as Muslims, we have to cover our neck, so I like going high up with the collars. Also, to add plain with some text and then to just bring it all along with some ripped jeans, and white sneakers go with absolutely anything.
This is something I purchased very recently. It's skirt leggings. Absolutely love, and inspired by Dina Tokyo. And I love my heels. I'm not very much into printed scarves, so I'm always in my plain scarves. I'm not really much into accessories, but I have a watch collection. This is just an antique watch which I found that would go perfectly with my outfit.
It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so just to be part of it, I've bought these as a donation, and I've been wearing these. Also, I wore these rings because I wear them all the time. My mom gave them to me.
Islam influences the way I dress and the way I look, because in Islam you have to cover up certain areas of your body, so I basically try to cover up all the time.
Do you ever wonder where you've come from or who your ancestors are? There are so many ways to find out, and we delved a little more into the topic of tracing our roots.
South African Muslims make up 2% of our country's population. Their contribution to many factors of life as it is today is unmistakable. Afrikaans, as it is spoken in the Boerkaap, has a story of its own. There is and always will be a debate about the origins of Afrikaans, but it is clear that the influence on the language and its development came from the so-called Malay, African tribes and Europeans who settled in the country.
The Malay contribution must be viewed on the basis of people that were brought from 4 areas of the Indian Ocean, of which quite a big portion was from nowadays known as Indonesia. Then also from India, Mozambique and Madagascar. But in the initial stage of the importation of slaves came from Indonesia, or for that matter, the Dutch East Indian archipelago. So the local Creole language, Afrikaans, that emerged as one of the youngest African languages, was influenced and shaped by the presence of East Indian slaves, as well as political exiles, and also Chinese Panditen from the Malay archipelago.
Because of the phonetic nature of Arabic script, one can tell that the Afrikaans written in this old script was the way it was spoken at the time.
Die mening van te hare by die taal van Arab is om skoon te was van enige veiligheid.
Because of the phonetic nature of the Arabic script, one can tell that the Afrikaans written in the old script was the way it was spoken at the time. The Cape Muslim community used Afrikaans as a medium for communication and education within their community structures. Muslims from the Indonesian archipelago brought with them their influences, as did those from other countries. Afrikaans was formed as a new language which became part of their identity as South Africans.
Ahmad's thesis on the Afrikaans was at 1806 till 1906. It was his MA thesis. When I went through this, when I read through I didn't study the thesis, I just read through the thesis. My goodness, I was impressed. And if I may also quote one of our prominent, quite renowned Sheikh Amin Fakir, who is the author of many, many books. My goodness, when he said to me, Ahmad did extremely well with this thesis. He wrote about tajweed in Arabic and Arabic Afrikaans that we were not aware of, you know. It was fresh information. As far as I'm concerned, Ahmad Davids, I would address him as Professor Ahmad Davids, quite frankly, for the works that he did, the work that he did on these Afrikaans.
The late historian Ahmad Davids wrote a book entitled The Afrikaans of the Cape Muslims. Intensive research was done into the Arab Afrikaans manuscripts found in the homes of Cape Muslims dating back to the period 1815 to 1915. It was during this period already that Afrikaans was spoken in the homes of the Cape Muslim slaves. This research has helped academics to understand better the origins of Afrikaans.
Going through the text, I think it is convincing, quite frankly, that he proved to the Afrikaners that we were the people here at the Cape who excelled in Afrikaans, or maybe who were the founders of the Afrikaans language, obviously with the influence from the Dutch and Malayu, whatever.
I think Ahmad's research does challenge the notions of the origin of Afrikaans, because for a very long time, people thought that it was purely white people who changed Dutch into Afrikaans. And what Ahmad showed was that it was actually Muslim clerics who wrote Afrikaans first. And he's got proof of it. It was written in Arabic script, yes, but it was Afrikaans. It was no longer Dutch. And that is why his book is so important. Ahmad's book was very well received by the general public. And I think the reason is that what Ahmad has shown is that Afrikaans is actually an African language. It was created here in Africa. It is not a language of the white people only. Yes, it is an inclusive language, and I think that is why it's important. Afrikaans, for a very long time, for various reasons, was a language of the oppressor. We can now look back, and thanks to Ahmad's language, we can actually say it is an African language. It is an inclusive language. And it was created not by white people, but by the people of the Cape, by ex-slaves.
This creolized language was formed amongst Cape Muslims, largely as a new identity and a way of communicating that would overcome the language barriers between slaves brought from different parts of the country. It was a language that was looked down on by the Dutch and seen as the tongue of the uncivilized lower classes.
Afrikaans have always been a language of the underclass. That's why it was called kitchen language. So the language have always been in the hearts and tongue of the working class, or for that matter, the poor. It wasn't a language that was sponsored by the rich and the powerful. Afrikaans have always been part and parcel of the Cape Muslim community because they were some of the fathers of the language and mothers of the language. So it became a social marker in terms of Afrikaans, but then it's two versions. One is the colloquial, and then the other vernacular that was heavily influenced by the first language movement based on Dutch. But the one that the community was speaking is influenced by their cultural contribution and, most important, by the terminology of their religion.
Identity and culture is ever-changing. In the context of South Africa, many learn from the stories handed down through generations. Often these oral histories are lost along the way, and sometimes the discovery of ancient writings, such as the kitabs of the Boerkaap, reveal a heritage and culture once lived in the very houses one calls home.
It's almost time for our monthly events calendar, and there's still some space to hear from you. If you have any events coming up, please let us know and we can include it. Time now for our books, tech and app segment.
This book helps one develop mentally to succeed and improve your life. Through the glorious Quran and the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, it empowers the reader to increase their spirituality and help develop themselves mentally by controlling their conscious and subconscious minds. With knowledge, man rises to the heights of goodness and to a noble position and attains to the perfection of happiness in the next world. From the noble messenger Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Knowledge of Quran and Sunnah helps us to understand our spiritual self and discover the leads and the signs to unleash our higher self. In turn, it will bring us peace and happiness in this world and the next. Rafiq and Friends is a new and exciting edutainment series that helps children develop their identity as young Muslims with characters who they can connect with. It provides children with quality Muslim-oriented toys, books and activities that they can connect with to bring them fun, education and family memories. The website is interactive and allows everyone to connect and have fun, whether it be coloring in drawings, creating festive cards, decor ideas, and printing labels.
Is Ramadan special?
Yeah. My favorite holiday is Eid.
Log on to www.rafiqandfriends.com to learn more. Nurani Qaida is an Arabic learning utility designed to assist Muslim kids and all those who are naive to Quranic alphabets. This app will facilitate the beginners in learning Arabic alphabets in an intuitive way that are the basics towards understanding Tajweed, rules of Quran. Nurani Qaida app contains chapters, and the sequence of the chapters is in accordance to the level of learning from easy to complex. An instruction section is included in order to guide users further towards learning the precise pronunciation of Arabic alphabets. It will serve as a Quran teaching application for children as well as beginners who are keen to learn Quran. The Arabic alphabets are the backbone towards learning the language of the Quran.
Kale is all the rage in the food world. In fact, most health-conscious people swear by it. Our Lamise du Toit, who never misses a beat in keeping up with the latest fads, turned the healthy kale into a pakora.
Assalamu alaikum. By now I'm sure you've heard that the humble vegetable kale has become all the rage. It's now known as superfood, so great at fighting cancer, amazing for diabetes, amazing source of vitamins and minerals. But how many ways could you possibly eat it? So it resembles a cabbage, but it's not quite as thick. It's sort of like spinach, but not quite as sweet. So other than making dehydrated chips, what else do we use the kale for? So I've come up with a pakora bite recipe. And to make that, you need the following. I've got 1 cup of self-raising flour. I've got 1 cup of chana or pea flour. I've got some water just to get our batter to a nice runny consistency. I'm using only 1 egg. I've got a tablespoon of whole cumin seeds, and that really adds the crunch to this dish. I've got salt to taste. I've got a teaspoon of turmeric, a teaspoon of baking powder, just to give it extra crunchy and make it nice and fluffy as it drips that kale. And then I've got 2 teaspoons of crushed chilies. So literally, we weigh everything into a bowl, quick mix, dip, fry, and then I'll show you how to make a mint dip to go along with it. So we'll start off with our self-raising flour. Next in is my chana flour, and then I'm going to go with my spices. Now my jeera has already been dry roasted in a pan, so with this I add about 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Turmeric, and that's just to brighten the color of the batter. And then I've got the baking powder for extra crunch, and my favorite, the crushed chilies. We get these out of the way so we can actually introduce the kale. Okay, so into all of this I'm going to crack an egg. And only once I've added my egg will I slowly start to introduce moisture, because you never quite know how much you're going to need. So the older your flour, the more liquid you require. The fresher your flour, the less so. Okay, and I can smell that alongside me, my oil's getting nice and warm. And I've got this on sort of a medium high, so I would say between 4 and 5. Not hotter than that. Not that your kale needs to cook at all, because the crunchier it is, the better. Okay, I reckon we're good to go. So let me just get this out of the way. Get this closer. But we've got a system going. So in with our first kale leaf. So all I've done is devein these. Nothing fancy schmancy, and you're going to dip. And you don't want a heavy coverage, just lightly, so that your kale stays the star of the dish. Whatever excess you've got on here, feel free to wipe it off. But you want to get it in between your frills. So yes, it's messy. So let's check out well. And the slight moisture that comes from here is literally from the kale itself. So each one of your kale bites is made up of a half a kale leaf. And don't be afraid to get messy. It's the only way you're going to get your kale covered. And that popping sound, that sounds like military fire going off. That would be your whole cumin seeds that pop in the oil. And there you have one delicious pakora bite ready to go. And what's nice about the kale is it's not quite like spinach. They stay crisp. And if your oil's hot enough, they fry off really quickly. So it's a really nice winter snack to do really last minute. And all we need to do now is make some mint dips. Let me clear some space, and I've got everything ready for you. And all that we're going to do now is I've got some double cream yogurt, which is about a cup. And into this, I'm adding 1 whole green chili, a clove of garlic, fresh mint leaves, salt just to make sure you get that nice savory taste, and a good squeeze of fresh lemon. And all that we have to do now is zap. And there you have delicious mint dip, literally done in seconds. So all that we have left to do is plate. And I've got a wooden board. I've got freshly fried pakora bites. And I promise they stay crispy. This is a kale leaf. Crunch. Yummy. this with a cooling mint dip. Not that cooling, I just put in the green chili. And all that's left for me to do is to greet and say, until next time, see you in Pakora Heaven. Bye.
And from what I hear, the kale was as delicious as it looked. For all you health nuts, which includes me, there's another item on the menu to try out. Shukran so much for spending the last half an hour with me. I've had fun as well as inspiration. From me, Mara Mukwanda, Thalang Hantle. Assalamu alaikum.